What's happening, gang? Back live again in the ESPN radio studios for another installment of Truth Radio. Tracking down some cool local people, talking about what I think is some important local stuff with our singular goal of leaving you a little better than how we found you. And I'm hanging out with these are our two superstars from 2015. We're doing like a best of show almost with Alejandro Rodriguez and Joel Incorvaia. And Joel is getting us, man, I feel like a little heavier after some of those stories that you shared in the last. I led a little less cavalier about rolling up on my neighbor. I'll tell you that right now. And hoping that you're learning some stuff in the process as well, too.
Right.
Picking up where we left off, our frame on this is the truth about bad fences and good neighbors. But something tells me there's a tree story in there, too. Is there not?
We have a lot of tree stories. Actually, it's an area where there's been a lot of conflict and litigation. So we have to explain a little bit about how the law of trees actually works. Because there's a couple typical problems with trees. One being roots from your tree going to your neighbor's yard, and what rights do you have to protect your house from roots that are intruding into your property. The other one has to do with branches from your tree or your neighbor's tree that go into the neighboring property. And this is a real problem, common because trees get, you plant a tree near the boundary, it's great, and 10 years later it's this very large tree, and now you have branches that are going into the neighbor's property or vice versa. So what do you do? So what a lot of people don't know is that if your neighbor's tree actually is encroaching onto your property, you have the right to trim it up to the boundary line unless it might kill the tree.
Unless it kills the tree.
Yeah. So if you can't be so aggressive that you do something that it may end up damaging or permanently damaging or killing the tree. So you have to be careful. You can't just cut like half the tree down, but you can do some trimming and things at the boundary line to make sure that that tree is not encroaching on your land. And actually, your neighbors should help you do it if they're being nice.
And I'm no arborist, but typically the death thing happens when you top trees that can't be topped.
Right.
We're probably talking about more lateral stuff, are we not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I wish we could talk about vertical stuff because I wish that was a law.
Right.
I'm dealing with palm trees with my neighbor right now. It's killing half of my view, and it's lame.
Right.
There's no law for that.
Only in Del Mar. City of Del Mar, they protect views, but nobody else does.
Man.
Yeah, it's a problem, too. We could have a whole discussion about views.
I think I'm going to actually do that with you. Seriously.
So the other issue we run into has to do with tree roots.
Yeah.
Again, you have your tree on your land. It gets bigger, and the roots grow in the neighbor's land. And they actually can require you to remove the roots that are encroaching, again, as long as you don't damage the tree. For example, there have been stories where people said, well, these roots are my land, I'll just poison them. Put a little poison on those roots, and pretty soon the whole tree's dead.
Kill the tree.
So now you got a lawsuit over that.
Yep.
We have a case we just settled in Del Mar where there was a 30-year-old, 6-foot-high concrete block retaining wall between two properties. And these are, multi-million-dollar properties near the beach. And this guy had a tree.
30-foot wall is no joke.
Yeah, yeah. But this one neighbor had planted this tree, and the roots got bigger and bigger, and they actually pushed against the wall, and the wall started to collapse. So my client went over and said, well, you need to do something about the tree. And he said, no, you need to build a new wall because your wall wasn't strong enough. You just need a better wall.
Oh,
wow.
boy.
So
dun, dun, dun.
Lawsuit
Yeah.
results.
Yeah.
And that went on for a year. We finally had to come up with a plan to build a new wall and to put concrete around those roots so they couldn't damage the new wall and figure out a way to split the costs. By the time we settled the case, frankly, the attorney's fees cost more than the wall.
Yeah.
Again, why? Because the neighbors couldn't sit down.
But the roots were actually at fault, though, right? So I'm surprised the guy with the wall was being so generous.
So, or was it on their property, on the owner of the tree's property?
Yeah, the roots were. No, it was my client's wall. His neighbor's roots were pushing against our wall.
Right.
So the law was on our side.
Right.
And his homeowner's insurance got involved, and they, the problem is that you get the insurance company involved, they got lawyers, and they need to get paid, so they drag it out endlessly, and then a year later they finally settle.
Yeah.
And by the time they pay up, you have we call it Pyrrhic victory. The cost of winning your lawsuit far exceeded the benefit of what you got.
What does that refer to as?
We call it a Pyrrhic.
Pyrrhic.
Pyrrhic, I think. Goes back to the Greeks. Look it up.
I like it.
It's like a victory that was so costly it became a defeat.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of that, and that's why you want to work these things out. But I have another funny story.
In the family of dispute, though, isn't that almost how it always is? I mean, there's really just two losers, whoever loses the least.
Well, once you get involved in a lawsuit in a case like this, everybody loses.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Right.
I have another funny case that actually is pending right now that to me just seems kind of outrageous, but it just shows you how people can do crazy things with property. So I have clients that have a house in Vista. They got some Brazilian pepper trees in the back of the land, and the neighbors on top of the hill didn't like it because it affected their view. So just one day, the neighbor rents like this, what do they call it, a cherry picker.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's got a hoist, this little cherry picker, and he shoots it up over the fence between the client's property, takes the cherry picker onto my client's land, and he's got a chainsaw, and he's just cutting down my client's Brazilian pepper trees.
Oh, wow.
And so my client comes home from work, and he sees this guy cutting down these trees, and he's a little afraid to confront him because he knows he's half crazy, so he just takes pictures. So I got some great pictures of it. And he doesn't even know the guy's name because he's like way on the other side of the property. And at the end of the day, half his trees are cut down. So he gets me involved. So we contact the neighbor and we say, hey, you're not supposed to do this. You better pay for the damage to the trees. And he says, oh, well, we had permission. And my client said, well, we never even met you before. And he says, well, we put a letter in your mailbox saying we were going to do it. And you never said no.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
So that was permission.
Wow.
So that's a pending lawsuit. And they have insurance companies involved in that one, too.
Shocking.
Isn't it?
Something tells me, though, that if you're picking up what Joel's laying down right now, a big advantage to having someone like Joel on your team is your 35-plus years of experience in going through this stuff, right?
Right.
You know, having that wealth of knowledge to be able to see a little bit further down the board than the move is currently being played,
right.
You know, and how that's so valuable to you. So if you're like me right now and you're literally taking notes and scribbling as fast as you can when Joel's sharing with this stuff, because it's the first time I've heard a half of it as well, I'm sure that's true for you, and you need Joel on your team for something. Joel, best way to get in touch with you is that phone number. You want to drop it again?
It's 858-259-2220.
858-259-2220, or
you can email me, which is Joel, Joel, at incorlaw.com, INCORLAW.com.
Which is actually the exact also web address, in case you want to do a little voyeuring in on Joel
Right.
and all of his amazingness first. That's INCORLAW.com. Gang, I can't thank you enough for coming in and doing this round two
Thanks, Jesse.
with us.
Sure. A lot of
you
fun.
were fantastic on your first time around, and I really hope that you guys had enough fun to be able to come back and grace us with your infinite knowledge once again for a future episode of this. And gang, if this is something that resonated with you as well, I invite you to go check them out privately. Again, Joel's is INCORlaw.com, and Alex is over at RodriguezLawOffices.com.
That's
Gang,
right.
thank you so
Thanks,
much
Jesse.
for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate you, and appreciate you for hanging out as well. Truth Radio. We'll be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Thursday at 10 a.m. Time for some more truth. Thanks, Steve. I'll see you next week, brother.